Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a esta.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our last session in MW22. This is a panel with 4 big guests, standards concerning gold standards in sports, not for recreation, but for development. Now that sports are multifunctional and are educational, financial, sports registered with territories. Is it a niche are they a niche for growth? With our 4 panelists, we'll dwell on opportunities implied by sports and the challenges and the needs territories have in order to adjust and to make sports into a growth factor and to increase their turnover. We have 4 gold standards. Guillermo Heredia, Managing Director from Metaverso Blockchain and Expanded Reality in Grupo Intermark, followed by Alberto Vinci, CEO, Chief Operations Executive of Platforms Operation, African Sports Network. Next, and last but not least, Christian Martin, CEO, founder of Sportive Talent. My question for you to take first is, tell me how come sports help development, especially in the Mediterranean? Tell me how sports are an engine for economic development in the Mediterranean basin. Guillermo, please. Let me quote a clear case about it. I used to work in the league, in the soccer league. My recent data tell that it generated more than 180,000 employments with an input into the GDP of 1.5%. It is direct employment created for the benefit of the league and the sports club for the benefit of hostelry, catering, tourism industry. A professional sports industry helps economic growth in various nations. This is my feeling about it. This is the track we should all take.
What my predecessor has just said, I think that sports inevitably has a fantastic impact on the economy. For instance, the European Commission has calculated that this impact is worth 280 billion over the overall European GDP, and this represents between 2.5 and 3% of the European GDP. So, of course, it is, 3,000% in agreement. So sports is relevant for the economic dimension. Of course, you've also mentioned in your introduction, sports is much more. Sports is so many additional, sectors that are touched by sports. You named transport, you named health, you named education, and of course, inevitably, we have to pay attention to this tiny little sector that ultimately becomes more and more important and more relevant.
I would like to focus on exactly what he said about the ecosystem, because I think that's the important thing, is that sport is much more than what's happening on the field. Sport is a whole ecosystem around it. And if we focus on the development in sport, we focus on much more in a society. When we talk about the grassroots, when we talk about our society and who makes up the society, when we focus on grassroots development, we're developing the talent and the future of our society, which leads to economic benefits. You nurture discipline, you nurture, the foundation of the youth and the people who are going to work in the society. But beyond this, it creates an ecosystem of different sectors, an ecosystem in transport, in healthcare, in different sectors where people can succeed and excel in general.
Sí, desde un punto de vista económico,
Yes, financially speaking, let me specify what sports implies internationally. Also, sports do register with the community. Usually, sports brings cultures together, people together. It's good for steward people into society, into the community. As long as you play, there are no social barriers, no social gaps. This brings people together. Now we have the Soccer World League, and soccer registers with many nations. I saw a film about Argentina going now through a very long financial a severe crisis, and the airport was full of people bidding farewell to soccer players going to Qatar. It implies excitement, and the excitement moves people, passion moves people. This is unique. This is the beauty about sports, which are a sort of religion for many countries. This eventually registers with industry and generates much income for the benefit of many industries. It is an industry that lives up to any other top industry, recreation, entertainment, whatever. Tell me how a passion, love, excitement about the sports eventually creates real opportunities for growth, for the growth of the territories, for the growth of industries, of companies, creating more employment. Let me add one more item. I think that on the one hand, let's talk about sports for recreation, for the sake of it. Next, the industry behind it with, professional, economy-based industry. There are some issues with some countries where sportsmen are not professional. Therefore, the income and the social income and the social relevance of that go unnoticed. In many countries, the national leagues are supported by government-run agencies or the government itself, which is not the case anymore of soccer in Spain. I think that the support of governments should not only be for the financial sake of it, but it should help us learn how to generate business and how it benefits other industries. Frequently, if you don't teach how to go digital about things, how to market things, as you said, do we have sufficient equipment in our country for kids to play basket and any other sports? And here, do we have sufficient equipment to go to top performance? Let's create top performance schools so that the athletes reach the biggest leagues and get more recognition. For that, we need the input of the government agencies, other players investing time, effort, and money in order to develop the financial side of sports. It's not investing money in it for the sake of it, but teaching how to properly manage that money so that it benefits the country.
How can you try to expand, develop further? Well, I guess that we are a little tiny element in this sports ecosystem, but we in Brussels, so we are the EPSI, the European Platform for Sports Innovation. Ultimately, we're trying to put together the different organizations that operate in the field of sports, and these are in respect to the top sports, but also the grassroots sports, and these are both private but also public entities. So within our platform, we have regional authorities, we have cities. The city of Setúbal in Portugal is one of our members, for instance, but also the city of Torino in Italy is another member of ours. So we have really the public authorities very much hooked together with the private sector. And so the public authorities are really at the different levels. So we have the local levels, but we have also the regional level, as I was mentioning before, and we also have the national level. So we have, for instance, the Ministry of Sports in Portugal, in Bulgaria, and in Greece that are also our members. And basically, we're putting everybody together to do mainly three things. So we are trying, with the first pillar, to advance and make sure that sports will be considered more and more as a strategic sector. So here, the first pillar is called lobbying and education. We have to lobby all the policymakers on the relevance of sports, but also you and us, everybody has to understand the relevance of sports. The second pillar is what we call fundraising. So there we're helping all our members to secure public funding, mainly from Europe. There is a lot of money available in Europe, and people hardly know that this money is out there. You just need people that understand the sector, the sports sector, and make the connections with all the financing programs. So this is why the second pillar is of essence. This fundraising pillar is very much important. And finally, we also try with our third pillar to create business, because we do not want just to receive public funding for the sake of receiving public funding, but also, to create businesses and to push the ecosystem so as to make sure that ultimately sports sector as a whole, top but also grassroots, will be as I would say concerned, as important as one could dream of.
Ahora lo decía Alberto, lo apuntaba antes.
I got Cristian Alberto. Tell me how important governments are, municipalities, town councils are, in order to make sports and territories into a place where we can grow. We can grow for the benefit of both big leagues and also grassroots sports clubs. Let me use a closer example in time closer to us. We work a lot with women's sports clubs. Especially, we are salient in the women soccer agenda. Frequently, in order to make progress, to go professional, for that we need public agencies to believe in it from the beginning. We need the government to believe in it together, the Higher Council of Sports in Spain, federations, any organizations that may drive us home about how relevant sports are, reaching out the community, using the media for this message to circulate, to make this message reverberate around. These apply to any sport, implies getting support in order to go professional about it, and on the basis of professionalism, we generate eventually business. Eventually, if the government creates an independent agency to manage this competition and the government invests, this implies that clubs are richer, can deal with more brands, can hire more players, and financially speaking, this registers with the community, with the industry. I think that it is essential to have that support. Without it, usually, there is no way to go to. Amongst the influential stakeholders, this is one of the big mainstays to tap to.
For sure, when we look at, as he mentioned, women's sports, when we look at sports which not necessarily don't have the support, we have elements of people in the private sector that are focusing on this, but without the support of bigger institutions, then it struggles a lot more. And I think the key word to focus on is accessibility. That for me is the role of the government in terms of, making sure that people, groups of people who are not able to access different, whether it's facilities or sports or funding or different measures for them to access a sport, are able to do that. So it's very important for these stakeholders to make the ecosystem more accessible, that regardless of where you come from, what your demographic is, that you can access the sport. But I also believe that it's a balance. I think it's a balance where it's not necessarily all focused on the public sector, and it's not only focused on the private sector, but there's a huge balance in what the private sector can do and what the public sector can do. I think when we look at the examples we give of women's football, women's sport, it's a huge balance of the people in the private sector who believe in a change, in a revolution, and support from the public sector in order to make this happen. So I think it's definitely a balance, and I see some places, there's examples I can give from Africa where the private sector neglects the growth and says that, hey, but it's all up to the public sector to take it over. But I think it's a balance in that, when the private sector is supporting the growth and the development, the public sector as well has, for example, the academies and the facilities of development at a much higher level to support that. But it's a balance, and I think they need to work hand in hand together.
Sí, además es lo que comentamos ahora. El deporte femenino es un.
Again, I tell you that women's sports is a new market niche, a new dimension in sports that this far has 100% been neglected, together with other issues. I mean, facilitating access to sports, to people, and inviting governments to work for that, and eventually betting on that, it's critical. We also have state-of-the-art technologies, cutting-edge technologies that bring closer this product, sports, to people. It's necessary to go to the facility, to the stadium. We also mind how we watch sports, a more opportunity for us to tap to. I think that the industry of sports, it doesn't matter which club you are, how big you are, Everything looks for three things here. First, how can I increase my benefits, current benefits? How can I get new sources of income? How can I relate better with my supportership? How can I reach this new audience that now is generating? Younger and younger people don't consume sports the same way people used to do. They are not so hooked up as older people used to. The answer here is metaverse, related to the emergence of artificial intelligence and cutting-edge technologies. Each one has its own way to define what metaverse is. It is a total integration between physical and digital worlds with different technologies that register with one another. Blockchain is a technology for us to own digital beings, NFTs, i.e. virtual worlds where you own virtual land, virtual properties, expanded reality, virtually augmented reality, mixed reality, 5G, 6G, 7G. We can go through digital experiences in a stadium. If I send a WhatsApp and it takes 15 minutes to reach the addressee, how can we have digital experience in the stadium? AI, I put these technologies together and the metaverse is created. This lays the foundations of my approach to metaverse and what other people think it to be, which is something else on top of virtual reality. Let's transfer this to sports with the three mainstays I previously quoted: Dapper Labs, a corporation, or Sorare, corporations that generate a new source of income, billions of euros, in highlighting sports matches of previous seasons, things that didn't used to give so much income as they do now. The collection cards from Panini, now Sorare digitally and with blockchain, sells collection cards for more than $0.2 million. Let's bring together these two different technologies and guess why is a museum open in the city? If you need to go to the Camp Nou Museum, you either go within business hours to that museum or you can get that experience. Why can't you tour the museum virtually 24/7 by anyone, anywhere in the planet for 160 days in the year, thanks to virtual reality in order to get the same experience? You know that it's 99,000 people allowed. This is the capacity of Camp Nou Stadium. How many people attend an international match? This is our way to start bringing together everyone so that they can go through an experience and feel for what the sports are. And this changes the way you relate with your supportership, being in the channels where new audiences want you to be. Roblox, Fortnite, sports contents are not on those platforms. These are ways we are opening. Several brands are dealing with it now. What's more important, territory in sports or sports in territory? Do we want to insist? We want to insist on sports in the Mediterranean. Tell me how ready the Mediterranean is to so that the sports develop the way we want it to develop.
In many institutions all over the Mediterranean area. So I'm Italian, and I know, for instance, that in Italy we have what we call enti di promozione sportiva. So these are institutions that ultimately are there to promote grassroots sports, really in every household. And so I guess that it is important that the impulse is done by public authorities. So these are the regional authorities, these are the municipal authorities, but also the impulse should be given by the market. So the market should become much more attractive to investors, for instance, to invest into the ecosystem, but also more attractive to even let's think about the organization of mega events. So I guess that we are not, I fundamentally believe that the sports ecosystem is not yet sufficiently mature because there is a segmentation of different compartments of what represent the sports ecosystem that I've not so far understood that by joining forces and by working all together, ultimately the overall ecosystem will be uplifted and will be developed. And so these are my comments, and I think that this is a little bit where we should still work a lot to try to ensure that ultimately, sports will become more and more relevant, considering also that, sports is so big that ultimately we tend to reflect about sports in a very narrow-minded mindset. And I guess that this has to change also a little bit.
100% agree, and I want to build up on the aspect of collaboration. I think it's important to join forces to work on making it a bigger thing. I think there's so much potential in terms of what represents the sports industry, in terms of what can be, you know, if we look at Spain, for example, different people see it as a reference point for sport in different ways. We have so many football academies where there's people from outside who look at it as a reference point, as the place where you want a young footballer to grow up. I think leveraging on what you're strong at and what is important is a good way to build it as you know, a strong region. I think the potential is there, but it's not maximized. And I think by paying more attention to what the strongholds are, you know, hosting more events like this and more events that are able to bring more events to the region and show that this region is a stronghold for sports, making sure that when we hear about the region, we hear about sports constantly and consistently. That sets a very good example, and I feel that specifically here in Spain. I feel that Spain has started to build a reputation of a strong football nation, a place where you want, you know, to build a young footballer, a place where you want to be associated to football. Let's do that all across the board. Let's look at the Mediterranean regions and starting specifically with the sports that you're strong at, you know, and also maybe investing into other ones that you don't pay too much attention to. And that way you build a reputation and this kind of ecosystem of, you know, we are a sporting nation, we are the area that is strong for sports.
Sí, para seguir un poco el hilo, claro, desde el punto de vista de territorios, del que igual puedo tener más conocimiento es de aquí de España y creo que va mucho más allá del fútbol, porque te pones a mirar deportes y en baloncesto campeones de Europa, en fútbol sala, en motociclismo tienes a grandes campeones, en Fórmula 1, en balonmano, en hockey. Entonces al final te das cuenta de que toda esa inversión que se ha hecho, no solo desde un punto de vista de clubes y demás, sino también de infraestructuras. Aquí tenemos el CAR en Barcelona, donde hay muchos deportistas entrenando, en Madrid está la Blume, y muchos centros deportivos que lo que permiten es ese desarrollo del talento, que luego todo eso puede llevarte a generar una industria por cada deporte, ¿no? Y creo que más allá de todo lo que implica económicamente, creo que es muy positivo que tú generes referentes sociales vinculados al deporte, porque creo que el deporte, más allá de todo lo que te aporta desde un punto de vista físico de salud, aporta también muchos valores que creo que en la vida luego son importantes, como el esfuerzo, el sacrificio, la persistencia, el compromiso, el compañerismo, y creo que eso es muy positivo, ¿no? Entonces, bueno, ¿qué afecta más? Depende, ¿no? Yo creo que es algo que se retroalimenta. Lo que está claro es que para cultivarlo hay que invertir, apostar, y creo que eso luego te genera frutos en el largo plazo, seguro.
Hablabas de referentes, tú controlas mucho del fútbol femenino, del deporte femenino, del masculino también. ¿Cómo las marcas ven estos referentes? ¿Ayudan al crecimiento también? Porque al final, cuanto más empresas vean un deporte o quieran poner su dinero aquí y vean que les da un rédito positivo, mejor va a ser tanto para el deporte como para el territorio. Entonces, ¿has notado o ves que ha aumentado el interés de marcas o de estamentos para formar parte del deporte femenino después del gran boom que ha empezado hace un par de años?
Sí, de hecho las marcas son un buen termómetro, indicador, ¿no?, de si un deporte genera interés o no. Cuando empiezan a haber marcas, ya no solo a nivel nacional, sino internacional, invirtiendo en deporte, como en este caso está pasando con el deporte femenino y en especial con el fútbol, porque creo que al final el fútbol femenino ha tenido la suerte de ser fútbol, ¿no?, que es lo que también mueve más a nivel global. Pues ahí ya te vas dando cuenta de que eso está generando un interés, ¿no? Al final las marcas lo que quieren es vender y para vender utilizan activos que les permitan acercarse a su público, ¿no? Creo que el fútbol masculino o el deporte en general te acerca desde un punto de vista muy mainstream, tiene mucha llegada, mucha audiencia y te da mucha notoriedad, pero el fútbol femenino o el deporte femenino en general te añade un componente también de valores, social, de que parte de unas bases mucho más complejas y más complicadas. Entonces eso creo que para las marcas también les permite acercarse a valores como la empatía o todas esas historias que luego les sirven para contar realidades que creo que a la gente le llegan también desde un punto de vista más emocional, ¿no? Entonces, creo que las marcas son fundamentales, no solo por la inversión económica, sino también porque desde un punto de vista mediático y desde un punto de vista de posicionamiento y de amplificación de un contenido o de una retransmisión, pues le aportan mucho valor.
I agree, and I think, when done right, the investment doesn't go wrong. When we look at women's football, as we're talking about, the investment that Stanley did into the FC Barcelona women's team, at the end of the day, it's a team where we don't know, before this, we didn't know if there was a fan base, we didn't know if there was interest, But after that investment, we see now that there's a strong fan base. The brand is able to associate with values beyond what they were used to. The values that you transmit while sponsoring the men's team is very different from the values you transmit when sponsoring the women's team. But even just by empowering them, now they've built a fan base. They have they have a different place in the media. The storytelling is different. And I think such examples need to go much longer and much stronger. I think there's a responsibility as well to look into stepping away from what's known and what's focused on sometimes, and also empowering another group. And I think there's 100% value, as that case study shows very clearly. There's definitely value in investing in a different group, and the results will come for sure. Once that investment is put in and the strategy is set right, then for sure the results are there, and the FC Barcelona's women's team is showing that by breaking the attendance record over and over, and these are conversations that have happened about, can women's sport have a fan base? Can people actually attend matches in the stadium? But now we've seen it happen when that investment has been put, and now more brands are attracted. So I think it's also important for brands to sometimes not have that fear to take that step and invest in a team that, or a sport that maybe is not known, because for them to grow, they need the investment. So let's have people taking those chances and empowering these groups of minority sports or minority teams in order to succeed.
Maybe the only thing that I would dare to add to this conversation is that I think that it comes from the maturity of the market. So the market has inevitably to start bubbling. I see it like a pot, like we're preparing a soup, And so the pot, when you really feel that the market becomes mature, then of course is the chance to grasp. And so I think that if we have to leverage somewhere, we definitely have to be at the level of the fire under the pot. We need to make sure that bring fire so that ultimately the market will become mature. So that's the only point I would like to add.
Me gustaría añadir, me gustó mucho lo que...
I do like what you said, aspirations, brands going to there when there is business for them in communication or financially, when you get some ROI. Back to what you say. Sometimes you access a very big mass. You should always have access to a big niche, not perhaps the whole of Spain. Maybe that brands are related to specific values and a target audience. You target at. You don't need Madrid or Barca. You just target at that small niche for whatever the reason is. It's interesting. Sometimes some clubs, some sports, brands think of how I can reach the target audience, and it's necessary to support the league or be the best sponsor of the league. You, for instance, may deal with Petanque League. It's necessary for brands to specify what the target audience is instead of think of going only to big audiences. It's necessary to specify which the target is for each brand. And in order to reach out your audience, you must especially know what your public is. And it may be very mixed in Spain, in the Mediterranean, in Barcelona. How can I reach out everyone in the community? How can I specify my target audience? How do I know what people need? Let's stop and let's think about what these people need. Young people don't consume sports the same way their fathers did. Tell me what it implies. Traditionally, there's only one way to consume sports. How we can approach these new realities we are not familiar with and therefore go untapped. I remember, for instance, one of the first projects when I started with the Russian League, we communicated in English over Facebook. When you realize that the Russians don't use Facebook, they use Contacta and it is Russian, it's not in English. So in order to convey a message and to have it listened to, let's use the language people use and the media people use. Let's call it metaverse or whatever. Metaverse does help us with it. If your target audience includes those above 65 who are not techies, really it makes no sense getting into Fortnite. If your target audience is younger, perhaps you should factor in the fact that it's not an ad on traditional radio or TV programs. And for instance, Manchester City, NFL is in Roblox, FIFA is in Roblox as well, Fortnite stars, Coca-Cola, Adriana Grande, Travis Scott auditioned for these brands as well, with millions in the attendance. Specify what your target audience is and find out where the target audience is and work on it. And perhaps you should use for that the cutting-edge innovations, or perhaps you should go back to radio, TV stations, conventional stations, or written paper. Adjust to the countries you want to penetrate. What works in Spain may not work in Morocco, in Egypt, and you have to adjust to the place you want to reach out.
And the pillar that is very dear to me is definitely the one related to business creation. In any kind of business environment, the very first element that you're trying to analyze is what is the value proposition. So what are you trying to sell to whom, which type of markets, and so on and so forth. But these questions are often forgotten. And I guess that we're not spending enough time in really analyzing what is it that would make the difference between me and a competitor, for instance? What is it that ultimately will drag consumers towards my brand as opposed to another one? And so these are essential elements that all the time, according to me, have to be kept in mind. And so these are the I would say the nitty-gritty of how we should go about.
I 100% agree, and just on that line, I think it's the importance of looking for that differentiating factor that leads to open-mindedness, I think there's a lot of similarities in what people are taking up and what people are doing, and that's why the cases like the different sponsorships of different teams it's not the first thing you think of because you look at what the other person is doing. But I think taking more time to analyze what your goals are and what difference you can make and how your value proposition can be different from another is how you reach that point of there's so much in the ecosystem, there's so much happening, but I think taking time to not do what the rest are doing, but doing something impactful in a different way, because there's so much to contribute to, and if you have the time to analyze it and make a proper strategy, I believe that it will be successful in the end, and while doing that, the positive impact is that you can empower a group that doesn't have the same opportunities. Whereas when we keep doing the same things and keep investing in the same people, of course, there are positive results there. But I think there needs to be just a bit more risk-taking in terms of reaching different target groups, reaching different audiences, and not going with what everyone does, but doing things differently, and successful results are waiting there.
Sí, por añadir algo complementario.
Let me add to this that one good thing about cutting-edge technology is that we can measure everything and make everything into numbers. This is my way to understand everything about my current audience, my audience to be. On the basis of the key performance indicators you may have, you may understand how they behave, and the brand calculates the ROI and how it should be dished out. There are many platforms now set on it, on providing you with information that's valuable concerning engagement, conversion, ROI, leads you generate. Usually, before that, we didn't have so much information, especially as the sponsorship with TV. It's been easier, and we had it about audience, but concerning sponsorship, there used to be brands that invested and didn't know how many people they were registering with or which the conversion rate was. Now, many sponsorship cases were not digital. Now they are 100% digital. When talking with big properties, they tell you that most of their sponsors are more focused on digital channels, not so much on traditional non-digital ones. And with the pandemic, this was even more the case because there were no big events to attend physically on site. This is good news. Let me quote one case. We went to brands, my corporation. I had a pool of sports people, of sports ambassadors and sports assets for them to tap, for the customer to tap to. And initially, they didn't know what to do. Now it's easier because what's the target audience, which channels you want to register with, which content you want to generate. And on that basis, I can screen it for you depending on the assets we work on in order to specify everything. I think that cutting-edge technology contributes added value for those who invest in sports. Let me add something I'm working on, helping corporations switch from step 2 to step 3 with NFTs, metaverse, blockchain technologies, the way, not the end in itself. It's a tool. Your aim is not making NFT, but if you want to reach out to your supporters in a more interactive, different way, if you want to retain them, use these cutting-edge technologies that are the tool, not the end, the purpose. Nike. The last thing I knew about it is that more than $0.18 billion have cashed in with NFTs, and only $10 million was what Adidas had cashed in doing the same, and other companies cash in nothing. For instance, I do NFTs, but for whom? For whose benefit? What's the difference between my NFT and someone else's clubs? Let's get set on the value and the usefulness of what we are up to, the link that's been missing in the value. That's why NFTs fell down and crypto coins fell. And let's differentiate versus the competitor next door. You were talking about competition. Tell me, are we fighting against the territories, or should we work all territories together in order to reap some results?
Either or. So sometimes you have to be competitive, sometimes you have to be collaborative, and I guess that it all depends very much on who's paying, so to say, or even what are you trying to achieve. And so I guess that you have to be as flexible as understanding very clearly what is the situation, and sometimes you will reach greater goals if you are in a collaborative mode, and sometimes you will reach greater goals if you are in a competitive mode. So I guess that I know that I'm not helping you because either or. Well, for me, it depends on the situation, and it is sometimes competitive, sometimes collaborative.
Totalmente. Sí, sí. O sea, yo coincido al 100% con...
I agree with you on it. Let's fight against, let's work with, as we see with the candidates for the World League. Ukraine, Portugal, Spain run for it. Sometimes we have to work together. Sometimes we have to challenge. In the region, one neighboring country may help you or work against you. Sometimes the name is collaboration, sometimes the name is competition.
Related to the European funds, there is now a massive fund that the European Commission has provided. It's called I3. I3 stands for Interregional Innovation Investments. So there, the European Commission is providing money, and per project, we're speaking about 10, 15 million euros per project. So of course, there, the essence is collaboration among all the different regions in the Mediterranean zone, but also elsewhere. And so you see, it depends very much on the type of situation we are in, who's putting the money, and ultimately what you're trying to achieve. Sorry, I just wanted to have give this example as well.
Perfecto.
No, I agree. And I think maybe the similar perspective is collaborating in order to compete. For me, it's about if you don't have any competition, you don't have anyone pushing you to a higher level. But at the same time, it's very, I think the importance of collaborating, it's case by case, it's situational. But the importance of collaborating is that reaching different levels, the growth that you can achieve when you collaborate is is greater, it's impactful. So I think in that case, collaborating is important, but the competitiveness is just maybe for, to challenge you to grow, to challenge you to be on a better level, and in order to achieve more than you're currently doing. So I think if you collaborate with the impact of, with the intention of competing, well, if you compete with a both in balance, I think is a simple way to say it. I think it's situational. I think sometimes it's important to compete, sometimes it's important to collaborate. But in the higher scale and in the overall scale of forums like this, collaboration is important for people in different regions. For people to, collaboration also means being in the same room, being able to understand what someone else is doing, being able to see different opportunities, and that is a way of growing together. But at the same time, there could be two people here who are competing against each other, and in that case, from him competing with me is making me even better because my competitor in the next country is doing better than me. So I think competing in order to collaborate and grow.
Sí, muy de acuerdo en esto. O sea, realmente lo que iba a decir es que para colaborar hay que ser competitivo.
Yes, you're right. Let's compete, but be collaborative at the same way. Two dimensions that go hand in hand, I think. In a framework where sports register with the world, where with technology, the world is more global now than ever. Thanks to Cutting Edge, this conference is reaching out to many countries and millions everywhere in different backgrounds, different places. This helps us have more valuable cases of collaboration. Sometimes you can bring together several industries. In a case of collaboration, this is interesting because it may help you reach out other communities, other audiences. It is okay doing it, I think, for that purpose, and especially that territories, that countries that are most developed concerning investment and sports development, sports culture, feel for territories and close to them territories that, for various reasons, were not so fortunate and help them change. I think that anything that may help sports develop should be welcome. They tell me to hurry up because time's running out. 1 minute for each speaker to tell me what the most important thing is, what's the most important challenge we are facing now in sports. What's your main challenge now in sports? Let me ask you how we should create a national industry around the sports. And also we'll take questions from the net, from the audience. Let's start with questions or with the speeches. Yes, you come first. Eventually, for me, sports channels values around, circulates values around for communities to develop in many dimensions. This is the main target. Everyone in the world should access sport. This is essential, and it belongs to human rights. Next, there is a big plethora of sources of generation of new income, reaching out to new supporters, improving the content. And our way to approach sports, let's improve the off-pitch side of it. Now, in many platforms, there are many documentaries related to sports, but off-pitch dimension in it is not factored in. Let's help brands match in a way that matches the values they want to circulate, to promote. Eventually, there are many mainstays that should be developed, community-wide, technology-wide, market-wide, media-wide, so that sports become a catalyzer for communities to develop on the basis of sports, because of its financial consequences and community-wide consequences, which is a dimension I'm really keen on.
And I think on the social level, I think there's importance, which maybe has been a challenge up to now that we can continue to work on, is that, for sure, there's been a lot of advancement and development in majority sports, in sports that are known, but I think it's important to balance it out. Let's pay attention to sports that may not have the same access. Let's pay attention to sports that may not have the same opportunities and the same sponsorship. So with all the success of sports at a high level, let's focus on the whole ecosystem. Let's focus on the grassroots. Let's focus on, let's make sure that someone is taking care of the high level, but someone is taking care of the lower level as well. Let's make sure that someone is taking care of women's sports, someone is taking care of men's sports. Let's make sure that there's a balance. Let's make sure that all aspects are focused on, and not that just football is successful and that's enough. Let's make water polo successful. Let's make everything else successful. And I think there's enough space and opportunities to make that balance. There's enough collaboration that can happen to make that balance. So for me, it's all about making the space inclusive. It's all about using sports to keep pushing values, to empower people, women, youth, and keep growing in different ways. So I think we can focus on collaboration, we can focus on inclusion, we can focus on accessibility in making sure that sport can be a factor, a tool, but not only one sport, and across the board for all genders, all races, and everyone.
Thank you very much. I think that my key words would be innovation. So first of all, I would like to innovate even tonight, and I would like to applaud all the participants that have remained until the very last moment of this conference. So bravo, well done. I think that it's not that easy. And so innovation is definitely changing the way things are done. And I guess that along those lines, ultimately we have to think outside of the box. We have to think outside of the box, and we have to try to find different ways. And in a way, I'm very happy because I'm passionate about sport. I've been in this sector for the last 30 years, and in a way, I put a little bit of this innovation inside this EPSI, this European Platform for Sports Innovation, where ultimately the innovative element is definitely bringing all the ecosystem together to do common projects based on each and every one individual's ideas. And so this is why I fundamentally believe that ultimately, we have to think differently and maybe act differently. But again, well done to you, because remaining until the end of this conference is fantastic. Very well done. Sorry.
No, añadir, se dijo yo creo que ya casi todo.
Everything has been said. Let me add again that the world is changing, and the world we consume sports now is changing as well. It is an opportunity for the youngest, for minority sports, for small clubs to bridge the gap versus the biggest ones. Those who understand how to reach out, how to link with the future generations who will eventually pay for your TV, your radio, to see you playing in the stadium or on any platform, the ones who buy your T-shirts eventually, are not the ones here in the audience. In the future, let's understand that there is a new generation coming upon us. The first ones to understand it will be the first reapers of benefit and the closest of the gap. We all know about Nokia, Kodak. It doesn't help being at top if you're not all the time understanding the new needs and the new markets as they emerge. Thank you, speakers. Thank you, audience, for your inputs. And this is the end of our conference and of Media Week Barcelona. Thank you.